Welcome back to another episode of the Who You Know Show podcast, where what you know is important, but who you know can make all the difference in your business, career, relationships, and life. My name is Trevor Houston, and on this show, you'll learn the strategy, grit, and mindset it takes to overcome obstacles so you can level up in your career, recover your cash flow, and live the life of purpose that God intended for you. Don't forget to look at the mic drop moments time-stamped in the show notes below. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure to pay it forward, subscribe, and leave an honest review so we can improve. Thanks for listening. My name is Trevor Houston, and please enjoy this episode of the Who You Know Show. Let me welcome to the stage the one, the only. We've got Phil Strazzulla in the house. Now, Phil is an entrepreneur and the founder of Select Software Reviews, a website dedicated to helping HR and recruiting teams to find and buy the right software through in-depth expert advice. He also started his career working in venture capital before getting his MBA from Harvard Business School. Another round of applause and welcome for Phil Strazzulla.
Thanks, Trevor. I appreciate it. Appreciate the warm welcome. Hey, everybody.
Man, I'm so glad you're here, and I appreciate you joining us today. And my first question is, Harvard Business School, say what? Man, you're smart, bro. That's all I'm saying. You smart.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, it was a cool journey. I remember when I took my GMATs and I did pretty well, but I never thought I'd get there, to be honest with you. And but you never know where the road's going to take you. I actually, crazily enough, got laid off from my first job out of college and was unemployed for a year when I was like 22, 23, and basically thought my career was over during the great financial crisis. And yeah, you can bounce back from that stuff. So it's been a journey.
Yeah, let's talk about that journey because, yeah, it shows here that you got let go but you got a job and a career during the great financial crisis. And now with all the talk about the recession and stuff like that, what are some things that you were doing then? Like, how do we recession proof this thing? How do we make sure that we're not bleeding out money and we can end up getting back to our cash flow? What were some things you did?
It's tough in no particular order. One, I think you got to keep your living expenses as low as possible. Obviously, I was 22, right? Like I didn't have a mortgage, I didn't have kids. It's easier to live off unemployment or some super small amount of money when you're young, but you always want to have that nest egg because sometimes you got to go through some stuff. I personally focus really hard on making sure I didn't fall behind skills wise. So during my entire job search, I was actually working for free for 40 hours a week at a company that was a startup in New York. And I got to work with the CEO and they couldn't pay me, but I learned a ton. And when I went into interviews and people were like, oh, like, what are you up to now? I just said that I worked at this company. I wasn't like, oh, I'm an unpaid intern that like this company is so poor, they don't even have enough money to pay me minimum wage. I was like, hey, like, here's the stuff that I'm up to. Here's what I'm working on, et cetera. And when, the inevitable question of like, why do you want to leave came up, I would just say it's a small and stable company. And I think that helped my story a lot. And it also helped me just generally keep getting these skills that I needed to get to that next level. And it just gave me something to do today too. Because if you're job searching, you don't have a job, it can be a little depressing, a little monotonous, and it's easy to be like, you know what, I'm just going to watch TV today or take a break.
Wow, there are so many golden nuggets. I hope y'all are taking notes from this Harvard Business School MBA grad here. He's smart. He went and volunteered his work. Okay, stayed busy, stayed sharp, continued his work experience, gained new skills, all at the same time as you were job searching, and you did 40 hours a week. My question to you is, that could be a little bit of a juggle. How did you do that? Putting in 40 and then putting in your job search at the same time. How did you do that?
It was tough, but I was super motivated. And the job that I had previously, I was an investment banking analyst and I was literally working 100 to 120 hours a week. So my average day was 8 a.m. till 2 in the morning. And sometimes I would work 40 hours straight like without going home, without showering, nothing. And so,
Dang.
yeah, yeah, and
Wow.
it was really intense. It was really intense. And then to after a year, they're like, "Oh, we can't afford cater salary anymore." I'm like, "Oh, cool. I just killed myself for a year for you guys." But so working 40 hours a week wasn't that overwhelming to me. And in fact, like I just had so much energy and drive. And I looked at my peers and I said, I don't want to fall behind my friends and classmates in our professional careers because I know that these first few years are really important. And so I just put in the time and really didn't do a whole lot more than work for free, try to get jobs, and that's about it. But at the end of the day, because I did all that, even though it was a great financial crisis and I was working in finance, there was a lot of jobs around, I was able to get a bunch of offers. It took a year. And then when it rains, it pours, right? Like you get one, then you get three. But it definitely set me up because otherwise my career trajectory would have been extremely different. And I'm 36 now and I would be in a much different place.
Why you got so many offers came in at the same time? I'm going to tell you why. So you had two things going for you: activity and your attitude. You had high levels on both sides. Your activity was
Yeah.
high and your attitude was high. And, how did you balance the two? Because sometimes it's this roller coaster, right? So you got one day where your activity's good and your your attitude's good because of that. You're like, man, things are going. I got a bunch of interviews, everything's good. And then you get those rejection emails and things like that. Like, how did you balance keeping your attitude up?
Yeah, the worst, everybody knows you don't even get the email, it's the black hole. And you had a great final round interview, you met 10 people on the team, and then they just never get back to you. And it's, "Oh, thanks for treating me like a human, I appreciate it."
Right.
I think, one thing is I kept myself honest, so I had a spreadsheet, and I think for unemployment back then, like, you needed to apply to 3 jobs a week or something like that. I was like, "That's stupid, like, I'm gonna apply to 30 jobs a week." And so I just made sure that I was actually doing that stuff. And then I think there's all this research that's coming out that's really interesting about what impacts our moods. And Trevor, I can tell like you're probably somebody that has like a natural, like super high levels of like dopamine and serotonin. We're all not as blessed with that sort of energy. But there's all this like research that's like, oh, like the food that you eat has a massive impact on the way you feel. And we know that, right? Like you go to McDonald's, you feel terrible. You have Coke and fries, like you feel terrible. So your diet, it has a big impact, your exercise, your sleep. If
Mhm.
you check those boxes, and it sounds so stupid and cliched, but that's the sort of stuff that's actually going to give you a lot more energy and allow you to fight through and be more resilient when you need to be, which is you're looking for a job. Like you're going to have to be very resilient. The other thing I like to do is I like to think of this like imaginary like competitor basically. When I was growing up, I was really into wrestling, and there's this guy, Dan Gable, was like one of the best wrestlers of all time. And he would always say, when I got tired, I would just think about my opponent and what were they doing at that point to motivate me. And I would keep going in practice. And I think about the same way, right? If you're looking for a job and you're like, I don't want to do this today, just think about the people you're competing against. And I hate to make it a zero sum game, but realistically, if there's one job and there's 3 applicants, you're competing against those people. What are they doing right then and there? They're probably going to go grab a bag of
Mhm.
potato chips and watch Netflix. That's your opportunity to outwork them and earn that job.
Mic drop. I'm gonna give you a mic drop for that. So I love that because I always talk to people about you're in competition. So if you're not doing it, also imagine that they may be doing it. If you're not going out of your way
Sure.
and putting in that little bit of extra in whatever it is, what are they doing to get that leg up? And yeah, I love where you were going with that.
Yeah. You gotta, I mean, whatever it is for you, like you gotta find a way to motivate yourself. I love the David Goggins book. You ever read that? Can't Hurt Me.
No, I haven't, but tell me about it.
It's a cool story. So this guy, he was in his early 20s. He was probably 400 pounds. For breakfast, he'd have 2 dozen donuts and a milkshake. And 18 months later, he was a Navy SEAL. And he just, when he got home from work, it was a night shift. He was an exterminator. He got home, he'd eaten his donuts, and he watched this like National Geographic thing about the SEALs. And for whatever reason, it just lit a spark in the guy and he went crazy. He lost like 180 pounds in the course of 6 months to meet the sort of Navy requirements, got in, did the SEAL training, which is insanely hard. And I think like all of us, like you might have looked at that guy 18 months prior and been like, the guy's a loser, right? Like he's never going to get his life together. But something happened there, something changed. And now he's one of the most elite ultra marathoners and
Mm.
athletes in the world. And so you got to find your spark. For me, it's thinking about competing against somebody else. It's thinking about my goals, my long-term goals, what I want my life to look like. For you, it might be your kids, impressing your, I don't know, your parents, your in-laws, like whatever the thing is, just keep focusing on that. Goggins said he listens to the Rocky theme song just like on repeat. Like for whatever reason, it just gets him going.
Yes.
So find your thing and just run with it. Get that energy.
I love that. For me, I had a moment and it was like, what was the thing that got me up? Was just I was tired of being tired. Anybody ever been in that position where you're just tired of being tired? You're tired of getting beat down. You're tired of having the enemy talk and put all this fear and lies into your ear and tell you a whole bunch of garbage that you know isn't true, but you're just tired. And like I drew a line in the sand. I'm like, I'm done. You know what I mean? Like I'm so sick of being tired and being afraid and feeling, just all of those feelings and emotions. And so I just made a decision in that moment. I was like, no more stinking thinking. No more stinking thinking. And sometimes you got to say things out loud, literally over and over and over. I was at a group yesterday and there was a guy there. And every time I talk to him, there's something negative that comes out of his mouth. It's the first thing. I'm like, how are you doing? And he's like, oh, it could be better. Like every time I talk to him, there's something negative. And I said, no, today's going to be a great day. I looked at him. I said, today's going to be, I told him to say it. I said, say it right now. 3 times. Say it. Today's going to be a great day. Today's going to be a great day. Today's going to be a great day. And he started smiling. And I said, it is, man. Speak it out loud. And so for me, that's what I had to do to get my mindset in a positive direction, was start speaking things out loud and start just proclaiming it and making a decision. It's a decision. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's kind of might sound a little far fetched, but stay with me. This guy that was one of my mentors, this guy's name's Felda. He just retired like 2 weeks ago, and he's one of the most successful venture capitalists ever. And he would always say, focus on the positives. Like that's what the best investors and entrepreneurs do. And this is somebody who, like, he was the original investor in like Staples and like all these companies, like over the course of 40 years. And that was interesting. Like he had like 5 takeaways from his whole career, and that was one of them. And it's something that like you see on the back of like, a field, like a high school field hockey team, like positive dots, yield positive results. And it sounds really simple, but like those are the things that are actually really true. And the nice thing is if you're listening to this, like you're already doing the right stuff, right? Like you're already trying to get an edge and find your path.
Absolutely. And for me, like there's a many times where I'm an emotional creature. You said I got energy, right? Earlier, you were like, you got a lot of energy. Listen, man, I'm very, very, I have heightened emotions. Whatever I'm feeling, I'm feeling. And if I'm like positive, I'm super positive. If I'm negative, I'm super negative. But what I try to do is I try to catch myself in those negative moments. Like literally this morning, I'm not even kidding. This morning, I was driving to work and I'm just like I'm arguing with myself. Like I talk to myself in my car when I'm driving. And I'm like going through these arguments, and then I literally stopped myself. I'm like, stop it. Like, quit. And people may think I'm crazy or whatever, but I'm like, quit. And so I started speaking again. Today's gonna be a great day. Today's gonna be a great day. No more stinking thinking. No more stinking thinking. So I had to get those thoughts out and put new thoughts in. But I don't think a lot of people take that action. I think they just let whatever emotions have them in that moment take them away.
It's tough. And I think it's even tough to realize what you're doing because a lot of this stuff happens on a subconscious level.
Oh yeah.
I had a conversation yesterday with our head of sales who has been here a year. It was his year reflection. And one of the questions I asked him was, what are the narratives that are going through your head when you're at work? And he's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And I was like, when you when it's Sunday night and you're thinking about work, or when you open your computer in the morning, or when you're getting on a sales call or whatever, like what's going through? Are you thinking, this is awesome. I'm going to close this deal. We're going to win today. This is another big week to prove myself. Or are you like, God damn it. Like, I don't want to do this. Like, I'm stressed about this. I can't do this. I'm not good enough to do that. And it's hard to think about that stuff. But when you start to kind of become cognizant of it, you might start to realize like, oh, I'm sabotaging myself.
Mm,
Like when I go into an interview, I'm thinking I'm not good enough. Or when I send a cover letter, I'm thinking, what's the point? And therefore I don't, structure it correctly. And so I'm not going to get the interview anyways. It's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
yeah,
Um,
the power of life and death is in the tongue, so be careful what you're speaking out because you may be speaking death. And,
yeah.
and if you catch yourself in a moment of speaking death, it's okay. Just recognize it and flip it around and literally start speaking life over and over and over and over. And I think you're going to start to see some positive results. I know you also like to talk about, the importance of side hustles. Okay. And does this stem from when you got let go and had to, find a job inside of the great financial crisis you were going through? Is that where that comes from?
I think it's just a natural like entrepreneurial urge. Like I just always get excited about little projects here and there and like building something, and I get a lot of enjoyment out of it, and actually, having an idea, getting it live, getting it out there. 99% of the time it doesn't work. But
When it
you
does, it
never
feels good, right?
yeah, exactly. And you never know where it's going to take you. I've started really, really small. My current business, like I just started it as a side project. And now it's big enough to very easily provide for our lifestyle. And, you never know where these projects will take you. And when you have a passion for something, you just have a really high probability of success, a much higher probability of success versus thinking I got to do this or I have to do that. If you're excited about something, it might just come true. So it's sort of the whole, get rid of this thinking thing.
Mic drop.
Phrase. Yeah. But I love the side hustle thing. And I think it's a way to learn new skills, to meet new people, and to just stay sharp. And some of these things turn into businesses. I've got a friend who started something. It was a class project in business school. We all had to start a business, and it's now $100 million business.
Whoo!
And this was something that like he started it and it just sort of ran on the side. And after like 3 or 4 years, it was like $1 million. And he's like, I'm going to quit my job and like focus on this because this is crazy. Like it's just been, 5 hours of my week, and it's grown exponentially. And of course, that's an outlier story. That's probably not going to happen to most of us, but you might find something that turns into 10,000 a month, and then all of a sudden that's a nice little cushion.
Absolutely. I mean, if you can just get a little piece of something, I mean, don't be leaving money on the table. And if you could do your passion and get a little piece of something on the side, right? And a lot of times we see these side hustles become the main hustle of what you were just talking about. And but it takes time, right? And so I think for a lot of job seekers out there, you want to be the CEO of you, okay? Like Neil, you want to be the CEO of you. Sheena, you want to be the CEO of you. Chandra, you want to be the CEO of you. So go start a little side hustle, okay? And that also helps you when you're talking about a gap in employment, okay? Because guess what? You didn't have a gap in employment. You're the CEO of whatever organization that you're running. You didn't have a gap. You were still working, but you were just working your side hustle. So I think that's super, super important. All right, Phil, I got another couple questions for you. We want to talk about avoiding burnout. Okay, it's something that a lot of people are going through. They're on that hamster wheel, even if they're working from home, and I think that's actually more of a hamster wheel, can be for a lot of folks. How do they get balance? How do they avoid burnout and really ultimately get something that brings them fulfillment and a little bit more balance? What do you think about that?
Everybody faces burnout. It's so hard, even if you're doing something that's your passion. Like I'm truly passionate about my work, and like there are, weeks, months that I'm just like, I can't even like get out of bed sort of thing. So a couple of quick things. Working from home, that's what I do. I have a dedicated space in my home that's for work. You can have it, even as simple as a chair that's like, that's my work chair. And so your body kind of knows like, oh, this is like different from the rest of our lives. Rituals to get into and out of work. So my ritual is have a cup of coffee and start work. My ritual coming out is making dinner, and my body knows to turn off. And that's actually what I do. There's a great book called Deep Work by this guy, Cal Newport, that talks all about like how to be a lot more productive. And a lot of it's by actually turning off
Mm.
other things, and turning off work so you can kind of relax. Some of the stuff we talked about earlier, eating right, sleeping, social interaction, exercising, meditation, something I try to do at least 3 or 4 times a week. It's hard to sort of sometimes rationalize the time, and you don't feel like you're being productive when you're meditating or you're working out or whatever. But what I've actually realized is probably the most important thing that I can do for my business is to take care of myself.
Boom,
And
mic drop.
yeah, so it's tough, right? Because we got a billion things you want to get done in the day. And you're like, should I really take 45 minutes out to get a workout in right now?
Yes.
And the answer is yes. Yeah, it's tough, but don't feel selfish, don't feel guilty. Just go out and get it done, and push yourself and get your heart rate up. It's so important for your health and your mental health. So you just got to do all this stuff. You got to stay on top of it. You got to get vitamin D, fresh air, and you got to have something that you're working towards, like a goal, like a very, very, very specific goal. Whether it's I want to be able to go to Whole Foods and not worry about the prices of stuff, or I want to be able to afford XYZ vacation, whatever it is. The last thing I do is every day I write down something very specific that I'm grateful for.
Mm.
So that could be like a cup of coffee, a t-shirt that feels really good, like the fact that maybe you got some alone time, whatever it is, like something small, and specific, and just kind of think about that for 5 seconds. It's a good way to start your day.
I love that. I love that. It's about routine. And, you remind me, what you just said reminds me of Glenn Lundy's Morning Five. And it's like 5 steps to start your day. And it starts with like physical activity, gratitude and goals, things like that. So I love what you just said. And I subscribe to that. Phil, also, you mentioned that you have and you would like to, as your giveaway, like to interview someone about their job search for the community. Is this a podcast, or what did you mean by that on your form when you filled it out?
Sure. So I run a website where 100,000 HR people and recruiters every month research what tools to buy. So like what applicant tracking system, what recruiting tool, et cetera. And so we have a very large network of these people who are always hiring. We have a community where people ask questions like, what payroll software should I buy or whatever. And we're always interviewing people, mostly HR or CEOs, about tools that they use. But I thought it'd be really interesting if somebody wants to come up and be like, here's kind of what my job search was like, and here's what was good about it, here's what sucked about it. Because I think it'll be illuminating for a lot of the HR people who are so focused on like getting butts and seats. Like, this is what our process might actually be like to a human. Maybe like we're not doing a good job of explaining, I don't know, the jobs or job descriptions, of getting back to people, of setting the right expectations, et cetera. So if you're interested in that, just shoot me an email.
Love that. What's the email address?
Sure. Phil with 1L at selectsoftwarereviews.com, or just, click on my LinkedIn profile, send me a connection request. And that's probably easier.
Love that. Love that. Love that. And before we wrap up, I also want to talk real quickly about our Career Transition Summit. If you're seeking employment, make sure you come check that out. We're going to show you how to rehumanize your job search, recover your cash flow, and reclaim your life. All right. A warm round of applause for Phil Strazzulla. Thanks for listening to the Who You Know Show podcast. My name is Trevor Houston, and if you've enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing wherever you listen and leave us a positive review to help us keep the mics on in the studio. Until next week, that's the show. It's all about who you know.